as these additional traumas arising from questions occurred. When somebody is already in what can be considered a coma, if another injury happens within the brain, if another blood vessel were to burst, then what happens is a deeper trauma occurs. There are layers of coma, if you will. And how we know that is that it is mirrored by the layers of the dream. Behavioral psychologists have looked at the fact that there are 4 stages of sleep. They call them Rem stages, rapid eye movement, traced by the rapid movement of the eyelid. And you can see how deeply that person sleeps. Within the sleep state itself, there are 4 major stages. So it was within the dream. Those 4 major stages created 4 loops of existence. They created the tree of life. They created the I Ching, the Zolkin. They created the 4 directions. The 4 loops of life we carefully discuss in the book, The Gift of the Unicorns. The 4 Rem stages. The first time the flower of life sphere formed was still the shallow stage of dreaming. It was the Rem state. Then, as another shattering happened, more breaking up inside, more trauma, and the trauma is always a loss of innocence. Another layer forms, and now Mother has moved into another level of mirrors. She's moved into the linear space of mirrors. And so we end up with more and more fracturing and deeper REM states until we are at REM 4, which is the deepest state of sleep. And in comas, it's the deepest form of coma you can be into without actual death. So we have the deep coma state at that point, which is described in the history of the cycles in The Gift of the Unicorns as the very deep stages of the fall. Multiple layers existed within each of those 4 stages, but 4 large loops of creation formed. That is clear, because during, I believe it was 2007, in May of 2007, I was sent by the mother to retrieve things from previous stages of sleep that had happened, where the density was thick, but some things were immortal and had been left behind. And I was sent to retrieve them, and there were 4 such spaces. They were dimly lit spaces, like going into a room with some slight moonlight coming in through the window. And that slight moonlight was because there were things within them that were immortal and had been left behind when it was closed off. Those dream spaces have all now been closed. The dream itself has been closed. We have exited the dream. A clear definition of the fall is the entry into the mirror spaces that were created. We went deep into the mirror, having fractured the infinite mother multiple times. As we went deeply into the mirror, and she found her way back out to the front images in the mirrors to try and get out of the mirrors in the sleep itself, she was pulled back in again. So she started living a life inside the unreal world of the mirrors. It was in the summer of 2008 that we actually managed to get free of those mirrors. But then, of course, we were still inside the sphere of mirrors. But that sphere, at least, was real, because it had had no beginning. The infinite mother, as she moved deeper and deeper into the mirrors, made some provisions. She could see that she was trapped in her own thoughts, that she was falling deeper and deeper into forgetfulness. And so she made provisions to help her never forget that this is not where she belongs, that she is so much more than this, and that she is in fact destined to come out of this ball of mirrors and regain her wholeness. One of the things that she put in place was a story that was handed down and became like a template of existence. You find it mirrored throughout different levels of creation. I have personally encountered it several times as we went up in ascension and moved up into higher spheres from the month of February 2005 until now. One such thing that she put in place is that she put higher codes of existence in gemstones. These gemstones were given into keeping of kingdoms, and the kingdoms were hidden in pockets of space and in at least one occurrence between dimensions, like a blister between in the membrane between dimensions itself. If you move between dimensions, it feels like you're going through a slight pressure, a slight resistance. It's the membrane between the dimensions. In the membrane itself, some of these kingdoms were hidden, and others were in pockets of space. That is again a different occurrence. But she gave them the gemstones with the creational codes. She then put 130 libraries on the earth called the Sacred and Holy Libraries, which we have been accessing. In every one of these sacred libraries, including the libraries of Isis, which was the first to open, secrets have been laid down. It has been kept so that as the libraries open, it would help remind the mother that this was not where she belonged, deeply into these mirror images that receded before her. So the opening and the reminding of mother was a little bit like the Hansel and Gretel story, where the two little children know that they're going to be left in the forest, and they leave a trail of breadcrumbs. In the story, of course, unfortunately, the birds ate the breadcrumbs, but in this instance, some breadcrumbs did remain, although some of the libraries were pillaged by those who came to represent the very large shadows that were being thrown throughout the mirrors. So the third thing that the mother did is that she told a story. And this story has echoed and echoed because the story became a template that she put when those original children that she created were combined together. It's a little bit like taking a beautiful cut out paper cake doily that you place a cake on and dividing it into 144 sections. When you put it together, you see the pattern of the doily. The pattern of the doily held within it a creational story. And the creational story was of that which brought about an expulsion from the Garden of Eden, the place of well-being, and the place that did in fact provide innocence. In the story in the Bible of the Garden of Eden, they lost their innocence and they suddenly felt naked. And then, of course, the story says the infinite said, "Who told you you were naked?" and so on. And then they said, "We ate of the knowledge of good and evil." Well, if we continue to look at this, this is exactly what happened to the mother. She ate of forbidden fruit. She entered into the world of the unreal. She entered into the mirrors because in her innocence, she believed every word they told her. The serpent and the tree are the images in the mirrors, and they do create a tree of sorts in lines in all directions. These were the aspects of Mother's image herself, not the different components that made the individuations, though the aspects themselves. The aspects themselves said to Mother, this is real. And in her confusion, not knowing, she only knew that she didn't know. And so when they said with great certainty that these mirror images worlds were real, that is when she believed them. And she was expelled from the place of innocence, the Garden of Eden, and with it, well-being. She made contracts with those images that they too would remind her of things as she went deeper and deeper into the dream, as she went into forgetfulness. They, of course, never kept their contracts. There were formed aspects of the Mother. There also was unformed aspects. And what the unformed was is that which filled the space in the mirror between the image of the two aspects. Because if you stand between the mirrors, if you look in front of you, you see yourself just going on into eternity. It seems that there is a space between the yous in the mirror. That space was filled by rivers of consciousness, equally hostile to the infinite. The Mother was life-enhancing. The mirror mirrors everything backwards. That which represented the mirror was, in fact, non-life-enhancing, the opposite of what Mother was. But she did not know the nature of mirrors, because she had never encountered anyone before, and there was none that she could ask. So the story of Adam and Eve in its multiple forms, I have traced on other planetary systems, I have traced it at other levels. From place to place to place, this takes place. And the story was so Mother would never forget that this is not Eden, it was a mirror dream state. And so that story still survives. Some images on Earth and around certain star races that came to Earth mirror the same story. It found its way into the Sumerian records. The Sumer people rose as a result of the star system of Nibiru, allowing their people to come to Earth. And so on Earth, humanity was established. That is the record that is in the Sumerian records. The Sumerian records gave that to the biblical records. And so it came from Sumer. It was the story of the interaction and the genetic formation of man's bodies. Was man then not on Earth when they came? No, they were. They were just in the inner Earth. So the story itself played out right here on Earth when we were still in the very dense sleep states. Just another part of a dream.